Hello. Happy 52 weeks in another week where it's a tough week. I'm being joined today by the amazing Douglas Mackie, and he has never watched an Instagram live, so he definitely has not been on an Instagram live. I have total faith that he can do this. And if he can't, oh, wait. Wait, no, I just saw him. I just saw him. Yeah, here we go. Yay.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Mackie. We
Hello,
did it.
Alexa. Are we
We
good?
did it.
Yeah. Can you hear me properly?
I can hear you absolutely perfectly.
Great.
I
Great.
apologize for the lawnmower you're going to hear perhaps in the
Okay.
background.
No problem.
So I first want to tell you that I am a huge fan of your work. It is so beautiful. Um,
You're very
and
sweet.
no, it's really, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I knew that green photo, the photo with the green painting.
Yes.
I think longer than I've known who you were, because it's a
Okay.
very, it's one of those images that just sticks with you. But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you how you got into the business.
I
I love a
st
good creation myth.
well, how I got into the business, I studied architecture, and I'd always have intended to be an architect. Probably, I think by the age of 17, that was sort of where I sort of realized I wanted to go.
And were
Uh,
you in London?
no, I started at Cambridge. So I was at Cambridge for 3 years, and then I went to New York for in an architectural school in the UK, you have a year out.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a job with I kind of not terribly interesting firm in Midtown Manhattan, who I won't name, but they were good. Um, and like many of these big interior design, big architectural offices in New York, this is back in 1986, in 1987. Many of them had, of course, their smaller interior design side.
Sure.
And I sort of became much more fascinated by what was going on in the interior design office than what was happening in the architectural office. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was spending a lot of my time sort of doing that tedious stuff that architects have to do, like door schedules and ironmongery schedules and window schedules. And I thought, my God, this is the most awful,
I hate
awful way
door
to earn a
schedules.
living.
I admit it.
Yeah, and well, we all do it, but I mean, in architectural firms, that this is endless, endless, endless. And I had a friend who was also working in New York, also from Cambridge, working for a guy. I don't know if you ever came across an architect called Rusty Glover,
I don't think so.
who was actually doing very nice work, and they were doing Robert Redford's apartment on Fifth Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
but designing all the furniture, designing all the light fittings, and he was just having the most incredible time just getting into the detailing and the making of stuff. And I realized that what he was doing was far more interesting than what I was doing. And I started doing some freelance work for him, and also started doing some freelance work for interior designers in New York, because rather like your father, I learned to draw. One of the great things I learned at Cambridge
Yeah.
was to draw. Um, we Practically the first thing we did at Cambridge, we went to Rome
Ugh.
for
This
nearly
all
2 weeks.
sounds so amazing.
Yeah, and just having that education of, we were positively encouraged not to take photographs. We had to draw everything that we saw.
I love that euphemism. We were positively encouraged not to take photos.
Okay, they said, "Oh no, I
I think I
can't
can
take
read
a
between those
photograph.
lines.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
dead." Okay, and it was an incredible education. Just that thing of sitting in going into a Bernini church and having 20 minutes to draw it. It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And and just
I
actually
mean, you can barely,
looking.
20 minutes is not even like enough to even look.
No, I know, but my God, when you draw, you have to look.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of actually really observing something in that incredible detail and actually translating that into a physical image on a sheet of paper. And literally, you were sitting there with a pad of cartridge paper and an HB pencil.
Yeah.
And I've still got that drawing pad somewhere. And it's amazing to look back through just over the course of 2 weeks, how the quality of my drawing improved from, I think the first church we went to was Sant Ivo, one of the early.
Sure. I was just there this past Christmas.
Yeah, incredible. And of course, now it's really hard to get into, and it's full of architecture students.
Yeah.
Then there was virtually nobody there. And going to San Quattro, the Quattrofontani Church, looking
By
at
the way, anybody listening, you should see the movie Sapienza, and you see all of St. Ivo.
Yes, I mean it's an incredible thing. So we were just going through Rome, through the Baroque, through early Christian into Renaissance, and drawing everything, and it was fantastic. So that was where I learned to draw, and that skill proved to be an amazingly useful skill set to have, particularly when I arrived in New York City, because most people didn't really draw.
Yeah.
And in the early days, but it was early days of computer renderings, and people weren't really. It was far quicker to do hand renderings, and
we still don't really do CAD in our office. Do you do CAD?
Only for floor plans. I don't. We do floor plans and elevations are all done. We use Vectorworks, and then when it comes to my presentation drawings, I do everything. I used to do everything with watercolor, and now I do everything on an iPad. Wow. I've learned to draw on an iPad.
What app?
I use something called Paper 53 or 53 Paper, I think it's called.
Okay, I'm gonna.
And the beauty, of course, now I discover I can draw when I can draw on the train, I can draw on an aircraft, I can draw in meetings. I can do a sketch in a meeting. You quickly you can save that sketch, you then put a color wash onto it. And then, of course, you can drop stuff in with Photoshop if you want to sort of quickly sort of put in a chair, put in a painting, and then render over it. So I found now that I know it's maybe slightly cheating, but it's a cheat that I really enjoy, and I like drawing with a stylus onto glass.
Yeah, it's not a cheat.
Nice feeling. It's a really nice feeling, and the way that the iPencil works on an iPad is just the most glorious thing. So that's slightly changed, but certainly drawing for me is the ultimate tool of expression. It's also the ultimate tool of communication with clients, and they love hand drawings.
Totally.
And there's nothing.
You can understand them more.
Yeah,
they have more depth.
As you know, and I'm obviously your father was one of the great exponents of this. The fact you can create that ambiguity through drawing, especially in the early stages when you don't want things to be, you don't want stuff in computers, because a computer almost implies a degree of sort of design resolution, which is ludicrous. I mean, early stage schemes, you don't want things to look as if they're already resolved. Otherwise, you're sort of deluding yourself and you're deluding the client that this has been really thought through. This is a fully worked through scheme. The beauty of sketching is that inherent ambiguity in everything that you're showing. And only then, once you get to the very final stages, are you then really putting things into hardline CAD drawings. And I think that ability to almost to put your own imagination into those sketches and let the clients also interpret these in a productive and sort of discursive way, so that you can discuss design without it becoming something that's so sort of fixed
Yeah,
And
it's such a great point.
yeah, and there's nothing more depressing than one of these CGI drawings that people ask for, and they're generally lifeless.
Or at least soulless. I mean, of course,
So
they're
it
lifeless, yeah.
is actually a better word to use them. We have to do them sometimes, but well, we don't do them. We get them done.
Right.
But there's something it's slightly kill unless you have an absolute genius doing them. I'd almost rather take a CGI and then do a hand
A drawing
rendering.
over it. That's a great
Soften
idea.
it down. Yes. So, but to go back to my sort of early days. So I was in New York. I realized actually by the time I left New York that I would rather be an interior designer. And I went back to Cambridge. In England you do a 2-year diploma.
Mm-hmm.
I then started working. I got a job in an office. I think we're really looking back to about 1988. It was just at the time of the Lehman Brothers crash, or the massive crash, the closure of Lehman Brothers.
The first one.
Yeah, the first really bad one. And I got laid off. It was the same week that Norman Foster laid off half his office in one day. I think 168 people got fired at Norman Foster's office in one day.
Wow.
And basically there was no work in London at all. And I started then, of course, I was able to pick up quite a lot of work doing perspective drawings, either for architects or for interior design, because that was still a skill set that was in demand. And I eventually started working on a freelance basis for an interior designer who was she was very well known at that period, called Tessa Kennedy. I don't know if you've ever
That rings a bell. Her. That does ring a bell.
So very quite full-on work.
This is 88, you said?
Late 80s, early
okay.
90s. She did a lot of work, quite a lot of sort of Middle Eastern stuff, but she was very close to Rudolf Nureyev, and she did a lot of work on Nureyev's apartment in Paris.
I'm sure I've seen pictures of that a million
times. And she was she was really into antique textiles, and actually just working there was an incredible experience, partly just in the type of clients that she had, some of whom were really unbelievably frightening individuals. I remember working we were doing this job.
A very unexpected thing to hear.
Yeah, I think you know some of the types. Maybe you've managed to avoid some of them, but I remember we were working for a family who will remain nameless for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
In this massive place in Knightsbridge. And I remember we delivered a television cabinet. Well, I had to deliver the television cabinet to this guy's house. Amazing house. And this was in the days, remember, of course, televisions in those days, they were kind of this size of front, but they were about...
Yeah. Rear projection. Well, so, I call them television coffins.
Yeah. And I remember delivering this thing, and this guy really took a dislike to the television camera. It looked great at the front, but of course it was really deep. It was a little thing for a bedroom. So he decided that the best way to deal with this was to actually destroy the television cabinet in front of me. And he literally took a sledgehammer and hacked this thing to pieces.
Wait. Questions. So many questions. He had a sledgehammer handy?
He had a sledgehammer, yeah. This was also a family that would routinely lock up their servants in the basement and take their passports away from them. So anyway, I'll tell you who this is later when we're not
talking. Offline.
So there were a few instances like that. These instances that really, I think I was traumatized for about 3 days afterwards. I couldn't believe that anyone could actually physically do this, let alone consider it appropriate.
And did you have to clean it up? What did he destroy
I,
it and say, clean
I
that up?
think basically the one of the bosses at Tessa Kennedy's came around and he dealt with it, but it was frightening. But this was trial by fire, working in London in the 1980s for some individuals. So it's got better since then.
God, I hope so.
I hope you haven't ever had an experience like that, Alexa. But
No, I've only once felt physically imperiled,
oh, really?
and it was because of a person who stormed into the apartment from downstairs, like an insane dentist, actually.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, no sledgehammers were involved.
Yes, you're lucky.
Wow.
Anyway, so I started work. I was working freelance, and I then decided I was always a very serious violinist when I was a child, and I played in the National Youth Orchestra when I was a kid, and then I joined the European Youth Orchestra when I was just before I went to Cambridge. So
a hopeless nerd.
I
I say that because I'm jealous of your obvious genius. It's just like super discouraging. Like concert violinist, great artist, Cambridge, beautiful designer. Screw you.
So I ended up during that first really bad period of the recession. I was freelancing for Tessa Kennedy. I was doing perspective drawings, and then I started working as a violinist for a chamber orchestra, which is very well known in the States, an English chamber orchestra called the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields. So I joined them. It was an orchestra that only met maybe every, for blocks of work, and you could choose, up to a point, you could choose what you did. So I probably played with them for about 3 months of the year. Which meant that I could continue to do my own design work. I was starting to get my own clients. I had income from Tessa Kennedy, and I could also freelance doing perspective drawings. So I in those days I was coming back to the States probably twice a year. We played in the Carnegie Hall many times. I was also just reminiscing that I've toured probably all over the States, and I've also remembering I've been to Akron, Ohio. Have you been to Akron, Ohio, Alexa?
I'm sure I have. I've been around a lot of Ohio.
Yes, yeah. And so
my father's from Indiana, so we have Midwestern connections everywhere.
Yeah. But it meant actually that those early years post-university were actually very stimulating. So there was a huge variety to what I was doing, and I loved it. I was traveling a lot. I was doing some interesting work, but I wasn't particularly tied down. And then just gradually my own sort of work started to pick up. I started to get bigger projects, and then I could actually really afford to start working by myself, have an office, etc. So it was a trajectory that was never entirely planned, but maybe for many of us that's a very similar situation. And so I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
So what year did you hang out your own shingle?
Probably, gosh, it was probably about 12 years after that. So probably into about 1990.
Yeah.
No. So 12 years.
2000.
My maths is 2000. Yeah.
2000.
So by 2000, I was basically working for myself, and then the projects started to get bigger, and never really looked back. So, and
I wish you had some drawings you could show us. I'd love to see your drawings. You're going to have to post them on your Instagram for some of us, all of us later, because your work is. I feel it has such an ambient. There's such soul. There's such feeling that I can only imagine the drawings are really amazing.
Yes, they're not quite as good as your father's, I have to say, but
Oh my God, you're
they're okay.
just,
So
I love
yeah,
you, man.
yeah. Do you draw yourself? Did you
I
learn
do
that?
draw.
Yeah, yeah,
I did not, I've just always been able to draw, so I haven't formally studied it. But,
yes,
I get by.
yes,
I'm nowhere near like my father. But
yes.
I can do an oil painting pretty well.
Oh, really?
But either oil or pencil. In
Yeah,
watercolor, I can't do it. I'm
yes,
terrible.
yeah,
I just
yeah,
can't leave leave blank the light, and that's the most important thing.
yeah.
So my mother would like to know, where are
Okay.
most of your jobs? All over?
Kind of all over. And the bulk of my work is in and around London. But I have done a certain amount of work in the Middle East
Uh-huh.
for one particular family. We're going to be doing a very big job in the Middle East fortunately starting, well, we're hoping to start in August. I'm intending to,
Wait,
yeah,
again, so many questions.
yeah.
Fortunately, we're beginning a project in August in the Middle East. I mean,
Well, you know,
not a sentence I thought I'd ever hear.
it's just, frankly, I think so much has been on hold for the last 3 months that actually this project's been brewing since January, but really only the last month have things started to. I almost felt this life just almost froze
Oh yeah.
for about 2 months, and a lot of things just went completely dead in the water.
I think everybody was stunned.
Yes, yeah, and
And in America right now, we are now
yes,
stunned anew
yes,
with
yeah, yeah,
horrors, fresh
yeah,
horrors.
yes. And it's also happening in Paris as well. I mean, you know, I think there were 20,000 people joined a demonstration for the same reasons, but a different case. This guy Adama
Yes,
Traore,
I read about it. Oh,
which has been a big thing in Paris, and his sister has been a very sort of vocal and highly articulate sort of, supporter of this movement. And so it's happening. Yeah, it's happening in
yeah.
Europe as well
It's
as the
global.
States. Yeah, which is good. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and suddenly, sort of, specifying fabrics and designing
I
sofas
know.
can seem a little bit, you know the feeling.
Right.
So, but it's certainly professionally, I just feel that there's a palpable sense that people are now looking towards the future. I don't particularly like going to the Middle East in August because for obvious reasons.
Oh my God. I mean,
But
I am a very sweaty person. Just thinking about it makes me sweat. I'm
yeah,
like, woo.
yeah. I'm, I remember a couple of years ago having site meetings. Going to a building site when it's 46 degrees is not great, and you are outside. I mean, you're not.
Right.
You're on a building site. You're not walking around air conditioned
So,
empty
are
rooms.
you doing all of the architecture as well? Are you
No,
licensed
no.
architect? Can one?
No, I don't do that anymore. Fortunately, I am trained as an architect, but we don't build.
But you have the ability to fluently
Yes,
discuss things with your
of course.
architect
Yeah,
brethren. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But there's an architect that this family use who actually does some really interesting work, and it is actually a traditional Islamic building, but
Mm.
it's not a Disneyland Islamic building. It
Right.
is something
Right.
that's actually built using traditional techniques,
Beautiful.
using timber, using the local stone.
Hmm.
So it is actually interesting in the way that this particular firm have actually really been involved in reviving traditional traditional techniques in the Middle East rather than sort of these.
Right. Plopping a chateau down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's a nice thing to be working on. It's on a great scale, and the client's incredibly excited.
Is your palette when you work abroad different? I mean, your palette, what I know of your work is, the pictures I've seen.
Yeah,
Um, how do you deal with color? Does it change in locations, or is it all about what your client wants?
I think the beauty of our profession is, and particularly for designers like ours, I mean, and I include you in this, that we actually have, I think, the ability to not reinvent the wheel every time we do a project, but I always say to clients, every project really is a completely fresh start. We're not the type of designers who, every project is going to be virtually identical. It's either stretched out or diminished in a certain way, but it's virtually the same color scheme, the same fabrics, every single job they do. There's nothing wrong with that, and in some ways, it's probably a great business model because
right. My father would often say that to me. Like,
yes.
it's a great business model. It's a great branding exercise, but not as fulfilling for us. Or, I mean, how are you supposed to get excited about your life and your career if you're just crapping things out similarly?
And I often say to people, I mean, working for me, we could probably be doing things far more quickly, possibly more financially successfully, if we were just churning out the same stuff every time. But my God, I wouldn't really want to get out of bed each day if I was just
what's life for?
It would be very dull. So
it would be very dull for a Cambridge-educated concert violinist and trained architect / designer.
Anyway, I like to, I suppose I do like to challenge myself. I like to challenge my clients, and I think particularly when I'm working in the Middle East, actually using saturated color in a way that I probably am less inclined to do in London. It's
a quality of light issue.
Yes,
is it not?
Yeah. Absolutely, and using colors that really sort of resonate in these types of sunlight is a fantastic challenge.
Yeah.
And I love, already now we're looking at, of course I'm downloading endless images.
Yeah.
Or already we've already boxes and boxes of fabrics already set out for this project, and it will be probably very different to everything. It won't be totally different. I'm not again reinventing the wheel, but we're certainly going to have a lot of fun.
Right, you're being creative.
Yeah, with a lot of color, a lot of pattern, and I'm excited about I'm just actually really looking forward to getting back to really.
I'm sure.
Really working again, because I think for a lot of us, it's almost been like almost like having a little sabbatical for the last 3 months.
And a fugue state. It's very.
Yeah.
It's very unreal.
Yes, and I suppose we enjoyed it at the beginning. I'm still enjoying. I'm down in France, as you probably know. I'm down in the middle of the country near to Nîmes, and it's beautiful. We've had an incredible spring, but
I only just learned that denim derived from de Nîmes.
Yes,
that kind of blew my mind. I was like, how did I not know that? It's terrible.
Yes, I know. You now know.
I now know.
But it's been wonderful. But I'm just there's so much now sort of brewing in my mind now. Actually, just to really sort of get stuck back into into the thick of things again is a very exciting prospect. So
I want to ask you, with those kind of projects that are. Oh, first of all, how big is your office?
We are basically 3 people.
Wow. Okay, that's very impressive and inspirational. I love hearing that. Because 3 people doing a job such as you describe is very impressive. You must be all tremendously efficient. But when you present to a client that you don't know on a project of that scale, how do you present? Do you show them like a few variations, or how do you direct them?
I don't present variations at the beginning. It will always be a combination of plans, but sketch plans and also sketch perspective drawings.
Yeah.
And I'll show you some of the things I do at another time, but that combination of a drawing that evokes the interior without actually being overly specific.
Right.
And then I will mood boards. I hate the term mood boards, but
I hate that term too.
it's slightly. Anyway, it's not my thing. I don't call them mood boards, but I do put
But are
together.
you referring to fabric or photos?
No, initially we actually put together a lot of stuff with Photoshop. So there will be images of furniture, there will be images of rooms, and of course, as I said in the interview that we did for the Instagram, that actually, you know, there's so many. I mean, you get these. Still, I go back to these. The great American decorators, and sometimes just pulling out some elements of some of these great rooms from the 50s and 60s, and usually it's the usual suspects. It's all the great decorators of that period, Billy Baldwin and Albert Hadley, Sister Parish, your father, and almost the entire language of our profession is condensed. It's still the Bible for so many of us, and then of course there's depending on the degrees of Englishness that we bring into our interiors. Of course, you've got all of the John Fowler interiors, and then David Hicks reinterpreting Englishness through the 60s, 70s, 80s.
In that pink bedroom, whose pink bedroom? Is that yours or somebody else's?
That's somebody else's. That's in a job in London.
I saw echoes, obviously, of David Hicks, because when I see a very strict canopy bed, that's where my mind goes. But also little echoes of Nikki Haslam, and you know, because it was pink. I was recently texting with Veer Greeny about his temple pink, and I'm like, God damn these British people! Like, they're so good. There's such a
of course,
scale and silhouette, and
Veer Greeny is great at pink. I mean, he's probably the best in the business of doing pink. But then before him, and of course, John Fowler was doing some of the best use of pink as John Fowler, and
David Hicks's living room in the country was pink.
Yes, so it's of course I am drawn to pink bedrooms. So.
Oh, great!
Yes,
I'm in a pink frame of mind. I called Veer because I'm repainting my daughter's room here in Southampton. And was trying, you know, pink can be treacherous, but that bedroom that you did is just heaven. But then, so, you know, everything I've seen of your work is, sorry, I'm fangirling, but it's really great. It's really great.
Yeah, that's very sweet of you. And of course, but there's a good chunk of American design in that particular room. And of course, like many of the projects, we use elements from Eve Kaplan, who's Or, who again is taking, because Eve Kaplan, I consider she's taking things that
was the mirror, right?
Yes, yeah.
That white chunky, I loved it. Gerald Bland carries her in New York, so when I saw that, I was like, so great.
Yes. And she of course she's taking Englishness and reinterpreting it through a modern sort of mindset, and it's from a distance you think it's a white painted Chippendale mirror, and then you look more closely and you realize it's actually very amorphous. It's there are touches of chinoiserie, but it's made out of ceramic, and my God, it weighs a ton. Have you ever lifted one of these Eve Kaplan mirrors?
I haven't. I don't go to Gerald Bland and be like, can I lift it? I've used one of her tables that had that same rock, you know, monolithic or not polylithic. I don't know how to describe it. All those large boulders, silver leafed with a glass top, but I did not pick it up. Yes.
Well, just be wary next. If you ever buy one of her mirrors, make sure you've got a very reinforced wall before you try to hang that thing, because I think that was 75 kilos, that mirror. Wow. It's scary. It took 4 people to lift it onto the wall.
And it's white. Like, everybody wear gloves.
yeah, yeah, of course. So anyway, that was a no. It's a room I love, and um,
What does
and
your house look like?
my house,
And is your house in London and your
well,
house in
my, my
France?
house, my house is the green painting.
That's it. Yeah.
That
That
that that that,
that
that is my house. Yeah. So the green painting I bought probably about gosh, about 10 years ago, and it was in my previous apartment. And then, but it didn't really have a great place to live in Notting Hill. And then we moved into a flat in Marylebone about 7 years ago. And then really that painting, like many rooms I do, that painting was actually the starting point of the room. It was
that's
that,
wonderful.
yeah, it was that
It's
almost
wonderful to
that
have it on hand. It's so, like you don't always have an amazing piece of artwork to pivot
yeah.
from.
But it's a great, I always think it's a great way to start a room if you've actually got that, almost that first thing onto which you pin the rest of the decor. And that can be
Yeah.
a very, when you have a client who has maybe two or three great things that they actually want to build the room around, it's the most
Yeah.
fantastic way to actually start designing.
And to be the antithesis of a soulless room, because if
Yeah,
that's the art
yeah.
that spoke to them. While I'm speaking to you, I'm FaceTiming one of my sons to bring me a charger because I just realized my battery was like 10%.
Okay,
So if I
God,
keep looking down, I apologize.
yes, yeah.
I need the anchor and a cord ASAP. I'll be love you. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Hopefully he'll listen.
Yes. So, yeah. So
So yeah,
there's,
so
I have a big green painting in my drawing room, and I still love it. So,
and
uh,
you said what is her first name? Blow.
Sandra Blow.
Sandra Blow. I was going to say Isabella, and I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yes. No,
Are they
yeah.
related?
No, no, they're not. Sandra Blow. I think I think her best work's from the late 50s through the early 60s, and I remember showing it to somebody Christie's, I think, who described her. She's world famous in England.
Sorry.
No, she's one of our British artists who we refer to as world famous in England. So I
I
don't
think
think
that's great.
yeah, I think she's not particularly well known outside the UK, but
But that is not she, the green painting.
that is she, Sandra
That
Blow.
is she.
Yes, yeah,
It's amazing. It really is
yeah,
amazing. I can
yeah,
understand why she's world famous in London. Like, is
yeah.
she with us?
I think not, and I'm pretty sure she's dead. So
Okay.
if she's not, I apologize.
Oh my God, yeah.
She's listening.
That is not a good look when
Yeah,
you
yeah,
accuse living
yeah,
people of being dead.
yes.
What is your house in France like? Is it very different or is it very similar to your house in London?
It is very different. Well, you can see some of it here behind me. I have a lot of antique textiles. A
Oh,
lot
we've
of
just found out that she passed away in 2006. By the
okay,
way, if this cuts off immediately, I'm going
yeah,
to restart again, and and you're going to have to, because we're close. We're close.
that's fine. Okay,
I I'm like sweating bullets now that I see. Oh yeah, there,
yeah.
1925 to
2006.
2006.
Thank you to J Board Realtor.
Yeah.
So, no, the house is very different. We live in it was actually a farm building. It was a bergerie where they kept sheep. Um, I will re-angle the iPad and probably drop it on the
Yeah, you
process.
should re-angle because that almost
But
looks like a
but
horizontal stripe on that window.
but you start to see I've got we've quite a bit of antique furniture, all from the region. So all of our cabinets are from the Cevennes. So they're simple, rustic, mostly sort of, mid 18th century oak and chestnut cabinets that were made locally. And we have these stone walls, which are enormous.
Oh yeah. Okay,
So,
I did not know what I was looking at before.
so you can look up
Beautiful.
these massive high ceilings, which is great, especially given the temperatures we get up to here in the summer. So yeah, it's a wonderful
And is
place
that
to
a
be.
shutter behind you?
It's a sorry.
Is that a shutter behind you?
No, but behind me, it's a Moroccan textile. It's actually a Moroccan shawl
But
from
Douglas,
the Middle
it's a
Atlas.
horizontal stripe.
I know, I know. Just when I trash every single American curtain that's been made
And
for the last 20
not only did you
years.
trash it, but I just installed the most
But it's not a
adorable
curtain.
striped Romans.
Yes.
And I was excited to take a picture and then, yes, mother, go look on his on 52 weeks and you will see his beautiful work.
Yes.
Um, but yeah,
No,
I read that and I
the
gulped.
lovely, darling Dwayne is saying, are any of your pics shown here on your Instagram? Yeah, on my Instagram, I haven't posted any of my drawings for a long time, but they are there if you can be
Oh my,
bothered to
we're
trawl
all we're
back.
all decamping and going to your Instagram.
If you can be bothered to trawl through my old Instagram stuff, yeah. But I might just post a couple of things tomorrow,
Please.
just to update you on the drawing side because it is, yeah, it's something I hold very dear to my heart. So, but here, actually, one thing I love about this house here is partly sort of doing something so different to the type of work I do in London.
Yeah.
I've been collecting textiles, actually a lot of Moroccan stuff. Quite a few of the pieces here I bought in Marrakesh. There's one incredibly good dealer in Marrakesh who I will give you the details of sometime, whose collection I think was very much part of I think his private collection was very much part of the Pierre Berger sort of stuff at
At the Saint
at
Laurent.
the Saint Museum, where they have a great museum of Berber art. So have you been to
No, I've never been to Morocco.
My
I'm dying
God,
to go.
you need to
I've
rectify
never,
that.
I have never been to Africa.
Okay.
Egypt is my number one most desired place to go, and it has been for the last 10 years, and it
Right.
never feels like the right time. And
Well,
I'm dying, obviously, I'm dying to go to Morocco.
Egypt, I think Cairo is one of my favorite cities in the world. Um,
I can't even imagine. And Luxor, and I mean, I want to see it because there's nothing
Alexa,
like it.
I will send you some tips because we had one of our best holidays we've ever had. About 3 years ago, we hired a dahabeah, which is an Egyptian sailing boat, which took us from Luxor down to Aswan. And we went with one other group of friends who he may be watching this now, and we had the most extraordinary time. You'll have probably seen the boats. Jasper
Yes.
Conrad did it a couple of years ago. It's called Noor El Nil, and it's run by this rather eccentric Parisian aristocrat and her slightly crazy Mexican boyfriend who used to be a lawyer. And they have just the most beautiful boats with these incredible red and white striped sails, and you literally sail down the Nile, proper
Down the
sailing
Nile.
boat. And you go swimming.
Did you paint?
Yeah, we swam in the Nile. It's
But
fantastic.
did you paint it?
Did I paint it? No, no, I didn't.
You
No,
did
no,
not paint while you were in Egypt?
no, I didn't.
I
I
feel
thought,
like throwing my iPad out the window behind me.
oh God, I'm a
What?
fraud. Yeah.
No, you're just terrible.
No, I'm afraid I
What?
did.
You're an ass.
No, I did take photographs, I'm afraid, on this thing. I didn't paint, but it's a very beautiful thing. Noor El Nil is called.
Noor El
I will
Nil.
send you a link, and when you feel
Yeah,
confident about going back to
yeah,
Africa or going back to Egypt,
yeah.
then this is an incredible thing to do. So anybody else watching in on this should look up Noor El Nil. It's Nourlnil.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. And then you end up at the old Cataracts Hotel in Aswan, and then you have a lovely time there as well. So it's a great thing. But we've been, gosh, all of our big trips. I know you're a great Indian. You've been to India many times.
Yeah, a handful.
Yeah,
I love travel.
yeah, and of course, for me, India is probably one of the greatest sources of inspiration that
So
I've ever
that was my
had.
next question: is when is your travel essential to your inspiration?
Yeah, it's essential to my inspiration. It's also essential to my soul. I mean, I do find both aesthetically and spiritually, the traveling is incredibly important.
Yeah.
We've had some really, really interesting trips to India. I think one of the greatest trips we had, and it was a house I found, like many of the places we go to, I found through World of Interiors. I don't know if there's an extraordinary place called the Ayelia Fort near to Indore, which if anybody looking in on this should look it up, because it's run by he's a guy called Richard Holkar, who is the son of the famous Maharaja of Indore, whose face we all know from those Man Ray photographs of him.
Oh yes, yes, he was so beautiful. No,
So beautiful, with this
so
extraordinary extraordinary beautiful profile.
yeah.
Who built this extraordinary modernist palace in Indore with this incredible furniture, some great piece of iron grey. And Richard Holkar now runs essentially a posh B&B in a place called the Ayelia Fort, which is the Ulster family temple, about an hour away from Indore, and it's incredible. It's completely magical. He's one of these guys, one of those Indian people that will still lives a little bit like a Maharaja. He flies his cheese in from Paris every week, and when he has a picnic,
I'm in love. He flies cheese in.
Yeah,
what more could you ask for?
we love that. He had a picnic one evening, in the way that people like that have picnics. The entire temple below the house was filled with candles. There must have been 10,000 candles. We all went down from the fort, through the temple, and down to the river. He then had 3 boats, also filled with candles, to take us up the river to a private island in the middle of the river. Meanwhile, he had people maybe half a mile up the river floating candles down the river on banana leaves. And then we arrived at this island in the middle of the river, and they were spit roasting lamb. They had Moet Chandon on tap. They had a little 19th century wash stand for you to be able to wash your hands, and this very grand, very Maharaja picnic laid out on the middle of the island. I mean, it was incredible. He still does this stuff. I have
Like
friends.
a fantasy.
So you can have this extraordinary fantasy that so few people know about in a very remote part of India. So again, I will send you a link to this guy's web, and he has 2 fabulous houses in Goa that you can also stay in. So
And I've never been to Goa. Very excited to go to Goa. To go to Goa.
Yes.
To go to Goa.
Yes.
That's like, I want to see the outdoor and indoor.
But I just go back to these experiences for me. We typically do one big trip, usually around Christmas time. And these are always an incredible source of just inspiration. In some ways, in oblique ways.
Sure.
I don't come back and say, my God, I've got to do an Indian interior now. But
But it could be a color or anything.
Yes, or a piece of architecture, or just something that really resonates with your sort of your mind in some way, and you come back sort of literally totally reinvigorated when you get back to drawing and developing schemes, and it's so it's very important for me.
In this exact moment in time, when you travel to places, your ability to empathize with different people of different backgrounds and to be on their, in their homes and in their countries is a wonderful thing.
Yes.
I mean, it just opens your eyes further.
Yes.
So that sounds a little sappy, but it's true.
Of course it's true. Yeah. And we've more recently, most of our big trips have been Africa. So Kenya, Tanzania have been pretty high on the list for the last 4 years. So, and I'm hoping we'll hopefully go back next year. Maybe if we're able to travel, that is. So,
Well, you just need to tell me when,
yeah,
and I will join you.
we'll have
Oh my
it. We'll
God.
have it.
There are
Yes.
people, by the way, who are still like disturbed by the on tap boy chandon, like on tap, like really on
Well,
tap.
not exactly on tap, but there was a disproportionately large number of bottles given the number of guests, which is kind of the way we like it.
Yeah. Did you say you were having a martini now, or what are you drinking right
No,
now?
no, I'm not a martini guy. I'm having a
Nor am
glass.
I a martini gal.
Yeah, I'm having a glass of Chablis,
Lovely.
which is nice. Yeah, because it is. I hasten to add, it is 8 o'clock here. So,
Well,
and
I
I've
didn't want you to drink alone, so I
okay,
have my beer, my Diet Coke, and
okay.
my cold coffee. So
Well, that's
I'm up
great.
and I'm down.
Yes,
Again. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me today. I'm so glad to get to know you as a person and
yeah,
not just somebody whose work I admire so much. They're people walking. I'm sorry.
yes,
Please post on Instagram some of your drawings
yeah,
because we're
yes.
going to want to look.
Okay, I will do so. And are you coming to London at all? Well, and
I don't know what's happening, where, what, how, nothing. I
because
don't know.
do you come for Pad and Masterpiece and all those?
I have come once to Masterpiece, and both of my sisters-in-law live in London.
Okay,
So, and my husband went to school there, so I have reason to go, but
okay.
I just need to do it. But when I go, I'm calling you.
Yeah, because we have a date in front of the green painting next time you're in
I
London.
was just about to say
Love that.
I want to see the green painting in person.
Yes, okay.
All
Well,
right,
open
thank you so
invitation.
much.
And thank you. And I hope we get back to some sense of normality very soon. So,
Or a better something.
yes, yeah.
Um, and what I was going to say one last thing, I can't remember anything anymore. It's really, really disturbing.
I
It was lovely speaking to you. Oh, just please go to your Instagram and post things for all of us.
Okay, I'll put some on now. Okay?
All right, great. Kisses.
Okay, take care. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Nice to meet
Bye.
you. Bye bye.